So what's going on guys, Kate is here and welcome back to a brand new video. For today I will show you a beginner guide on everything that you need to know as a new player in Thymesia. So I will give you a quick overview of the combat system. Then I will explain which normal weapons and plague weapons are the strongest and best to use. Then we will go over on where you should spend your skill points. And then lastly I will show you some tips and tricks that will help you out with fighting bosses and much more. So if this sounds interesting to you, then let's get right into it. So then first of all, let's go over to the Thymesia combat system. In general, Thymesia is a brand new dark action Souls-like RPG game that has similar but not the same combat as the original Dark Souls games. Thymesia has very fast combat with old school weapons like daggers, swords, staffs and much more. When you originally start the game, it might seem overwhelming, but in my opinion, this game has taken the hard and fun combat of Dark Souls and added her own twist. So for example, when you're fighting monsters in Thymesia, you can steal diseases from them and then you can use them as your weapon. This is a core gameplay part, where not only you can use your own weapons, but you can basically steal them from the enemies as well. One of my most favorite things is that the UI is very clean, and unlike different games, you won't get hundreds of different skills to use. But in general, you get 2 weapon slots. The first one is your main character weapon like daggers, swords and etc. And then you get a second slot, where you can use the plague weapons. Plague weapons are the weapons that you can steal from the enemies, and with the right talents, you can carry up to 3 different plague weapons. The main attacks that you perform will be with simple left and right mouse clicks, and you can do small combos as well. But overall the combat is very simple, so you won't need to think about 20 different things at once. But instead you will mainly want to use your left or mouse button or controller sticks, while using your spacebar a lot to dodge the enemy attacks. And then lastly, let's move over to the boss fights in Thymesia. And like in Souls games, this will be the hardest part of the game. Usually bosses will be found at the end of your quest or dungeon, and the bosses will usually have multiple cutscenes at the beginning, middle or end of the fight. As you can already guess, each boss has multiple HP bars or lives, which are indicated by these white squares. So for example, to eliminate a boss if he has 2 lives, you have to get this bar twice to 0. So then before we get into different attack types, let's take a closer look at the plague weapons. Each enemy has their unique weapons and different functionalities. So for example, some can knock back enemies, some can heal you, some can even let you jump in the air and much more. As I've mentioned, you can take your enemy's weapon and use it against them. What you need to do is hold down the right trigger on the controller or the right mouse button, and you hold it for a second to fully charge your character's Corvus Claw and then release to get the weapon. Charged Claw, aka using the enemy weapon, deals even more damage to the enemy and prevents them from healing. Your character will be vulnerable while charging your Corvus Claw, so I recommend to mainly charge it when your enemies are dazed or stunned. Getting this Reaved Plague weapon is a one-time use only. However, you can collect skill shards that you can get from dead enemies to unlock or upgrade your plague weapon. You can equip and unlock them in the plague weapon menu, and after you equip a plague weapon and use it, they won't disappear just after one use, but instead they will consume your energy. And the way you can recover energy is by dealing claw damage, which I will cover in the claw mechanics part of this video. You can use Y or triangle on your controller to use the plague weapon and decimate your enemy. And then on top of all of this, your character will get a super armor to protect you while you're casting the plague weapon. And then lastly, overall you can carry up to 3 different plague weapons at the same time if you use the correct talents, which I will cover in a different video. But mainly you can unlock 2 plague weapon slots through the skill shards, and then the last one by eliminating a boss in battle. So then let's move over to the feather attack, and I will show you how does this work. So the feather attack is another important part of your character's arsenal. Its main purpose is to stun the enemy and stop any incoming critical attack. When a green light indicator appears before the enemy attack, they will perform a critical attack that cannot be deflected. So the only 2 options for you is to move out of the range or use a feather attack. A feather attack you can perform by using your left controller trigger or mouse button to throw a feather to interrupt the enemy attack. and wound them right before their critical attack hits you, but not right after the green light appears. This indicator is not a quick time event, but instead the indicator is a warning, not a prompt, to throw a feather right away. So then when you successfully interrupt a critical attack, you will leave the enemy wide open and vulnerable for a short period, which will allow you to get few easy extra attacks before the enemy starts attacking you again. As you level up your feather attack in the talent tree, there are multiple routes to go. You can simply upgrade the range attack aspect to deal more damage to the enemy and regenerate feathers quicker, or instead you can turn the feather attack into a dash ability. Also a quick tip, after you throw a feather, press the left trigger or mouse click again to dash towards your opponent and unleash a special attack called Wrath. So then let's move over to the Thymesia claw mechanic. And before we get into it, you first will need to understand on how the health bar system works. You will often see two colors on the enemy health bar, white and green. The white bar represents their total HP, and the green bar is the amount of wounds on the enemy. You will need to empty both of them to finish an enemy. When the enemy's health and wounds are both 0, they will become dazed, which then you can approach the enemy and execute them. Whenever you are dealing damage to the enemies, you will passively inflict wounds to them, which then will heal after a short period, if no more damage is inflicted to them. So this means that if you don't utilize the claw mechanic, your enemy will quickly regain his health back. So to prevent this, we won't use the claw mechanic. Claw attacks are very effective on wounds and can absorb the plague energy. To use claw, you need to press Y or triangle depending on your controller. The basic move for a claw attack is a long claw. It's slow but charges forwards, allowing your character to keep a distance from the enemy, and you will also deal very high damage. But then on the other hand, you can as well switch to the short claw in the talent tree. However, the short claw will do a lot of very quick attacks that deal tons of damage in few seconds. So this is up to you. Do you prefer more sustained damage or short damage bursts? The claw can also be utilized to steal the enemy plague weapons, which we already covered in the weapons part of this video. So then let's move over to the dodging in Thymesia. And like in all Souls-like games, this is very important part of the gameplay. The talent tree will allow you to improve your character's dodging capabilities even more. You can even spend skill points on a long dodge. So for example, your character will perform an extended slide when you dodge twice, or you can also dodge offensively towards your enemies to quickly charge at them and then do quick damage. But then on the other hand, you can choose to have a short dodge, to have the ability to use it more often, and it's mainly used for close quarter fights. In Thymesia, you will get punished if you're not quick enough to dodge the enemy incoming critical attack. And a quick tip is that if you time it perfectly, then when your character is very close to the enemy, you can step up and jump towards the enemy right before his critical attack to interrupt him as well. So then let's move over to the last and final game mechanic, which is called deflecting. So you can press your left bumper on the controller just before the enemy attack, and if you time it correctly, this will deflect the enemy attack. Deflecting enemy attack will negate any damage done to you, but instead it will deal damage back to the enemy. In Thymesia, the combat can be tricky and hard at some times, so timing this correctly can be a difference between winning or losing a fight. The talent tree gives you some flexibility in your approach. So for example, you can increase the time you have to deflect, but this will reduce the enemy damage that you inflict. But then on the other hand, you can decrease the time you have to reflect, and in return you will deal more damage than per usual. And then last but not the least, do keep in mind that instead of deflecting, you can as well block the enemy attack altogether. This of course will reduce your overall damage, but if you don't have the best reaction time, then this can be a simple solution to avoid the enemy damage. When the enemy has a green indicator right over their head, this means that they are right about to charge in with a critical attack. These cannot be deflected, so to escape critical attacks, your only option is to use a dodge or somehow interrupt them, which I already explained in the feather attack part of this video, and that's about it. So with that said, I really do appreciate everyone for watching guys, and I hope you enjoyed it. If you have any suggestions, feedback or other good Thymesia guides or tutorials that you would like to see in the next video, then feel free to leave your comments in the comment section down below. And while you're doing that, please click like, subscribe and enable that notification bell, so this way you could support the channel and you wouldn't miss any more amazing content from me. With all this said, you have an amazing day and I will see you in my next video, so take it easy, peace.
Yo, I ain't here